Dwayne,
My cousin Chad.
welcome to the barn, buddy.
Man, I'm glad to be here. This is nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're pretty happy here. We're getting things set up kind of how we want it. A little bit of a
Exactly what I thought your barn would be like. But this is great.
appreciate you stopping by today. We are cousins.
Yeah.
In my childhood, growing up, it was me and my younger sister. But I had a lot of cousins who were really close with, and we lived maybe 2 miles away from each other. So when I was growing up, I didn't have any brothers, but it felt like I had a lot of brothers. And you were a big part of that, and all my older cousins were a big part of that. So I was kind of like the young follower, it felt like, where anything that my older cousins were into, I wanted to be into because they were older and they were cooler. And there's some good stuff that you guys were into and some bad stuff that you guys were into, but we'll save that for another day. But boxing was one of them. I remember coming to your house, going to your house a lot, and you guys would get the pay-per-view, and we would see what I think is maybe not the greatest era of boxing, but definitely where it gained the most attention.
Yeah. The easy answer here would be to drop the words Mike Tyson, but it was more than that. I mean, we watched Riddick Bowe, we watched Evander Holyfield, Lennox Lewis. We watched, George Foreman the night he fought Michael Moore. Like all these things that we watched happen that, it's easy to just say, oh man, it was so neat to watch Mike Tyson, but like it's deeper than that when it goes for boxing. I remember watching Foreman knock Moore out. I remember Riddick Bowe and Evander Holyfield in those, the three fights, So, like you said, I'm glad that I have these cousins that were beyond cousins that I could share these memories with, you know?
And we kind of grew up as a crew. You guys were a little bit older than me and your brother and our younger cousins, but we followed you guys and we wanted to be like you guys, and that was music, sports, some rowdiness, but a lot of it was the sports element was a huge part of our lives and continue to be.
It was neat that, like, if I experienced something for the first time or heard a song for the first time, that I couldn't wait to share it with you. With my cousins, with my brothers, plural, but singular with you.
Yeah.
Like when I heard, like, we would hear a song across the hall or across the room and lock eyes like, are you hearing this? And just have those musical moments, and those moments. And that's what I appreciated about you, Chad, is that you always had, it's awesome to look back and recognize those moments when they happen, but like to recognize them when you're in it, that was your gift. You recognized the moment when we were in it. I know that you were able to document a lot of it. You took a lot of pictures. I see some of them, in the barn right now. And
you mentioned Mike Tyson, and I actually have a signed Mike Tyson glove over there. It's one of the things, and it's one of the centerpieces to my personal history collection that we're kind of, around right now, because he was such a huge part of my life when I was growing up. I almost, in a way, kind of feel like, Madden just passed recently, right?
Yeah.
And we associate Madden with a lot of things, but one is the game.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Tyson's Punch-Out had a huge impact on us.
The first time I beat Tyson, like, I called our cousin Jason first thing. It was the first thing I did. I want to get a tattoo one day in tribute to my brother. It's going to be a montage of video game stuff that we shared, growing up. And one of the things that's going to be on there is 007-373-5963. That's the code to Tyson on Punch-Out.
And you're 40 what?
I just turned 45.
45, and you remember that. And when was the last time you had to use that code?
It's probably been, 25 years at least, and that was probably just for a goof then when I played it. But 007-373-5963.
Yeah. Playing that game, and it was more than that game, but it just kind of, I've kind of, looking back at all this Madden stuff in the documentary. Have you had a chance to see the documentary yet?
No.
Really good.
Yeah.
Really good. And the younger kids, they don't know Madden even as a commentator.
Right.
They just know the game.
This guy Troy Aikman, he puts his glasses on and he sees better.
Yeah. So it's for me, it's kind of hard not to compare the two, but watching Mike Tyson fight in real time with your own eyes live at the time was something magical. I do remember, and this is kind of a joke that a lot of people, I think, use sometimes, or they've used in the past. But I think one time you had rented a pay-per-view, and I forget who was fighting. I literally went to get, a glass of water or something in the kitchen, and I came back and the fight was over.
The fight was over. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was like watching electricity, man. I mean, that time period. But you also mentioned, the other competitors at the same time. He had to have people to fight. Earlier in his career, he didn't. He ran through dudes.
Yeah. Yeah. There was some. That's why he had such vicious knockouts, is because like he was playing chess and everybody else was playing checkers. Like with Customato being in his corner, he just learned the game at a different level than anybody had ever learned it before. Even though he wasn't his trainer, Muhammad Ali had the most respect for Coach Customato. There's YouTube video out there of them sparring, and Cuss actually gets a lick in on Muhammad Ali. But Tyson was, there was the spectacle of it all, but there was also, man, devastating. He threw, like he said himself, the best way. He threw punches with bad intentions, but to watch it happen was really it was a work of art, because he knocked dudes out.
Yeah,
and it was funny because you don't know it, now with perspective. Like I've learned like Tyson's style and watched video about how he fought and his defense
technique behind
like
it,
the combinations and how they had numbers, and he had this hook uppercut. Like hook to the body, and then this uppercut that would knock you out. And it's funny because on Punch Out, every 6 seconds for the first minute and a half of the first round, that's all he did is throw this devastating uppercut that would knock you down on the first punch. And you had to avoid it for a minute and a half. And the Punch Out perspective of it and the spectacle of Mike Tyson was always fun. There was always the perspective, the fights that he missed out on if he'd have fought at Holyfield 3 years earlier. If he hadn't went to prison, it was the same way with Ali with being drafted and not being able to fight for 3.5 years while he appealed that. It's like taking the man's prime away.
Yeah.
And
so in that '90s perspective, I think the word the word spectacle is what it felt like as a viewer watching it, because it was crazy, it was wild, and the ear biting and just the madness all associated with it.
Yeah, he fit in well with like the WWF at the time, WWE now. Yeah,
it's a good point.
By the time that we were old enough to be watching these pay-per-views and everything, he had already lost. Douglas had already knocked him out. That happened when I was like 13, I think. When he fought Douglas in 1990, I believe it was. So I remember it was my older stepbrother that came in and told me that he had just saw it on ESPN or something that Mike Tyson had lost and gotten knocked out. And I remember like just shaking my head and like wanting to cry. Like, no, you're lying. There's no way.
Yeah.
But boxing has been a big part of our growing up, beyond the, hey, let's get together and watch the ball game kind of sports, like we always did that. There was always that. But when there was an event that happened in boxing, whether it be on HBO or on pay-per-view, we were in there because, and even beyond the heavyweights, watching some of these other guys in the, the middleweight division and watching Floyd Mayweather and stuff like that, Prince Nassim Hamed was one of my favorites. He was fun to watch. And, Julio Cesar Chavez, and hoping that someone would beat him. And then finally someone did, and he got robbed. Pernell Whitaker, you know.
That's a good point. It's a good hang. It's a good sport, and UFC's that way. MMA's that way now.
It's taken that torch and ran with it. Yeah.
And maybe we'll get into that a little bit later.
Yeah.
The UFC element to it, because I'm a UFC fan as well. It's a good hang. It's a good point that you make, is that if you're going to get the buddies together and have a beer and sit around and watch something, that's a good one to watch.
Yeah.
Unless you are watching Tyson in his prime and you go get a drink of water from the kitchen. When I think about Tyson, you're talking about, that shot to the body and then the uppercut. He's setting something up. And he's setting something up. Shot to the body, you're gonna bring your gloves down, you're gonna cover yourself
just a little bit, just naturally. Even if you don't wanna, your body's gonna try to not get hit there again.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think because of some of the stuff outside of the ring, Tyson didn't get the credit for, some of the strategy and some of the strategic elements to his boxing. I think he's a punchline in a lot of ways, but that guy is actually really, really smart. Was a really great boxer, not just for his power and his speed, but for his boxing ability.
Yeah, and learning from the best doesn't hurt. But you can either take in what you're hearing or not. And Tyson decided to take it all in, and it was, for his, betterment and our enjoyment.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to go back a little bit further. Right, that was the time that era was the time that we grew up watching it. But we're also historians. And with this day and age and YouTube, which we actually have YouTube on right now, you can go back and see some of that stuff and read about some of those times before that really laid the foundation for what we were able to enjoy and still enjoy today. So when we come back, we'll go back a little bit further if you're okay with that.
I'm down with that.
All right, buddy.
This video is brought to you by the Wellness Investors. The Wellness Investors are a collective of individuals with uniquely diverse backgrounds. Our goal is to inspire, motivate, and entertain. Visit thewellnessinvestors.com and start enhancing your life, one sector at a time.
Welcome back to the barn. We're in the barn right now. We're talking boxing. I am hard as we speak. I love combat sports. And again, I think it ties back into watching a lot of that when we were younger.
Yeah.
But that experience in that HBO Showtime boxing couldn't have happened without those guys that laid the foundation.
And that includes my dad. And I had to say that. He was the one that paid for it all, Like when we got a pay-per-view, he was right there watching the fight with us. And holy shit! And then all over the place, We had a good time watching those with Dad, too.
Yeah, we'd get some pizza. We'd order some pizza. A bunch of kids would show up, and we'd watch boxing. And I'm not sure. I think that's what made it pretty popular, that a lot of people would show up, is that not a lot of people were doing that. So, kudos to Uncle Mike and your dad.
I didn't really get told bedtime stories growing up. I got told stories of Muhammad Ali for some reason. And if you know who my dad is and, his views on the world and his politics and everything, you wouldn't think that Muhammad Ali at the time that he was growing up watching him would have been someone that my dad would like. But he did. He loved Muhammad Ali and would tell stories about how great he was and the things that he could do in the ring that he just loved to watch, My dad got to grow up watching those, and he was at the age that we were growing up when he was watching Muhammad Ali. And the thing I want to hit on with Ali is, there are so many documentaries out there about him that are worth watching. They are all really worth watching, but We Were Kings is the best one. And if you recall, it won the Oscar for Best Documentary that year, in 1996, I believe.
Yeah.
And George Foreman helped Muhammad Ali up the steps to get the award, okay? And the reason why I bring up George Foreman is because I want to tell you that there's more to the story of George Foreman's love for Muhammad Ali than just helping him up the steps that night. If you go into George Foreman's house in Houston, and I want to bring this up because where we're sitting at with all this memorabilia surrounding us, you would think that when you walked into George Foreman's house and you were surrounded by all of this boxing memorabilia, robes, gloves, boots, title belts,
right,
whatever, all around you, okay? Not one thing in his foyer, whatever you want to call it, in his house is his.
Really?
It's all Muhammad Ali stuff.
Huh. So he's a fan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Ali knocked him out.
Yeah. That'd be tough.
And, not only did Muhammad Ali knock him out in the Rumble in the Jungle, and that's what We Were Kings is based on, but they had an ambulance at ringside because they thought Ali would just take this great beating, and Foreman was just going to beat him up. And since Ali was so proud and could really, and you can say what you want about Ali's speed and his punching power and that jab of his and the thing making people miss by an inch, and all that, but man could take a punch. He had a chin, and he proved it. When Frazier knocked him down in their fight, and Frazier walked back to his corner and said, when he turned around, he thought that, they were going to be counting Muhammad Ali out, but instead he was standing already.
Yeah.
And but that night against Foreman, they thought that Foreman might beat him to death in the ring, but that's not what happened, and that's why he was the GOAT, the greatest.
And you cannot have any kind of conversation about boxing and not talk about Ali.
Nope.
And I think it's funny, too, that the great eras of boxing, we mentioned it earlier, you have to have the opponent there, too. You have to have somebody, a dancing partner is what they call them, right? And he had some really great dancing partners. But Ali is hands down, and I don't think anybody that I've seen or heard says otherwise. He was the greatest to ever do it. If you're a casual fan, it might seem like a violent act. It might turn some people off, right? My wife does not like watching UFC or boxing or anything.
Okay, yeah.
But to me, it's poetry. And he was the ultimate poet. Watching him box and setting up things, and you have to know a little bit of technical elements to it and the strategy behind it, but the rope-a-dope, things like that. It was playing chess in the ring, but it happened in split seconds.
Yeah. The Phantom Punch. Ali explained it by when he hit Liston for in the rematch, and it's the famous photo of him saying, "Get up, Sonny. No one's going to believe this." You know, they call it the Phantom Punch, but Ali explained it as like a blink of an eye is 0.4 seconds. And that's what happened when he hit Sonny. Everybody blinked, and they all missed it. So.
Yeah, and that photo and several of his photos are iconic.
The fact that George Foreman would decorate his house and with all the stuff, memorabilia of the guy who, you know, he grew up to idolize, and he loved Muhammad Ali. And George Foreman, the transformation in that man, the George Foreman that knocked out Joe Frazier.
To commercials.
And then, like, the George Foreman grill and the smiling hamburger eating. Yeah. The story with George is that, you know, he set Michael Moore up. He just kept making him move to the same place when he threw a punch. And then he just altered the angle of the punch that one time and hit him. And, man, when Michael Moore went out, he was out. He was out.
Yeah, and we actually did watch that at your house.
Not just my dad that night. Uncle Paul was with us that night. I remember that clearly.
Yeah, and Moore was the heavy favorite, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
And here this old man, you know, that was just pretty much known as the hardest hitter in boxing maybe ever, you know, didn't have a chance. And, man, he proved everybody wrong.
When Jim Lampkin said he did it, and that really, really, really summed it up. He did it.
Yeah.
I mean, there was nothing else you could say. Like, we all just kind of sat there and looked at each other like, did this just happen?
Yeah.
And it did. It just happened. That was a cool night. Boxing in America, it kind of goes with as long as there's a heavyweight champion, we'll pay attention as a population, I guess. But we grew up in a blessed era for boxing, with seeing a lot of these heavyweights that held the title, and they got close to the title and whatnot. That for a long time, there was a lot of depth in the heavyweight division.
Right.
And that's why it was so big when it was.
Yeah.
You wish it still was like that, and it didn't take 1 or 2 fights a year in the modern day division. Beyond Fury, beyond Wilder, beyond Anthony Joshua, beyond those, you know, there's no depth beyond those combinations of guys fighting, and that's a real shame.
And I think a lot of the people with the money get in the way of contract disputes and where are we going to put this out, and
promoters just came along and just fucked it all up, didn't they?
The guy with the tall and
Don King. Well, my dad always said that the problem with boxing went out the door when they took the prize out of prize fighting. Going into a fight now, a fighter knows what they're going to make. Win, lose, or draw. There's no incentive to win.
Yeah.
If you go into the fight and say, hey, the winner gets 12 million and the loser gets 4 million, man, you got 8 million reasons to win now.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, and you see a lot of that with Mayweather and being very picky about when he would take fights and who he would fight. He was very strategic in that way as a businessman and in the ring too. And
I made him a billionaire, so you know.
I do see a little bit of a resurgence. It doesn't feel like when we were growing up in the 90s watching it, but it does feel like there's a little bit more of excitement about boxing. I think Fury has a lot to do with that, and when we come back, we'll dive a little bit more deeper into that.
This video is brought to you by the Wellness Investors. The Wellness Investors are a collective of individuals with uniquely diverse backgrounds. Our goal is to inspire, motivate, and entertain. Visit thewellnessinvestors.com and start enhancing your life, one sector at a time.
Dwayne, you want to give us a welcome back for old time's sake?
And we're back.
Yeah. We are back, and we're talking...
Back in the barn.
Back in the barn. Ooh, that's a good one. I love the combat sports. UFC is one of my favorite things to watch these days. Like you said, it's a really good time for the hang. The guys are over having a beer, and you're watching men be animalistic. Now, boxing is a little bit it's a little bit more like dancing, right? With the UFC and the MMA type of stuff, we're using our full bodies.
Mm-hmm.
So it does feel like maybe caveman times. But with boxing, it's a little bit more poetic. It's a little bit more maybe strategic in a certain way, because you only have two tools that you can use.
Mm-hmm.
But a current boxer who I love to watch box is Lomachenko.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
Yeah. Lomachenko is, when you watch him box, it is, and I think he even has like a ballet background.
Mm-hmm.
But it does seem like a dance, and they call him the Matrix because he might be in front of you in 1 second, and a half a second or a millisecond later, he's to the side of you, and you're literally looking like, where did he go? So I think that name fits him perfectly.
Absolutely. I think about one time Richard Pryor was in an exhibition, got in the ring with Ali for an exhibition round, and he said all he saw was the punches coming off his face. And I think fighting Lomachenko is going to be the same kind of feeling, because they come from so fast, so hard, and from so many different angles that it's hard to tell, like, am I still just fighting one guy here?
Yeah.
And when they call him the Matrix, it's not necessarily because he can bend to bullet time. It's because sometimes he can split into 4 or 5 different people, and he's hitting you from so many different angles, like that.
He's a lot of fun to watch, and he's not a heavyweight. I do think I agree totally with you that you have to have heavyweights to have a lot of excitement around boxing from the non-fans.
From the American fans.
It's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a good point. We're very selfish in that way, like where we expect.
We're selfish in a lot of ways. That's just one of them. And that's a story for a different time, too.
Yeah.
As the heavyweights go, so goes the views, and luckily right now we have someone like Tyson Fury that he's almost like that old Gatorade commercial of Michael Jordan when they pass the ball to Jordan and everybody stops what they're doing and just like their eyes just gravitate towards the TV. Yeah. Fury's must see. I don't care if he was fighting Oscar the Grouch. Like, I'm going to watch that.
His story is incredible. You want to talk about a comeback story. His story is unbelievable. And when you tie the story to his ability and his boxing, knowledge and ability, it's must see for me for sure. I love the guy, and him and Wilder and those fights. I didn't think they were close. Now the first one was close.
Yep. But
these last two, they weren't close.
He dominated what was thought as the best fighter in the world. Dominated twice. Not even like the first time they tried to pull some stuff about the Wilder's ring attire was too heavy or some bullshit like that. Man, you just got your ass whipped. And then it happened again. Fury did it again. He's a pleasure. Yeah. It is a pleasure to watch.
He actually, in a lot of ways, reminds me the most of Ali. Because he's so big and fast, and he's able to move on his feet really well.
With Ali, were there guys faster? Yes. Were there guys that could hit harder? Yes. Were there guys with a better hook? Yes. Were there guys with a better jab? Yes. But across the board, like in baseball, like the 5-tool player, Ali did all of them better than anybody could do any one
together.
And he was better at all 5 than anybody else was at one. And that's what separated him. And I'm going to tell my Ali story that I told you earlier. Can I do that?
Yeah.
All right. You never know how things are going to work out for a fella. You all know that Muhammad Ali was born Cassius Marcellus Clay in Louisville, Kentucky, actually on January 17th. So happy birthday to the champ. So he was born Cassius Marcellus Clay Jr. after his father in Louisville, Kentucky. And when he was 12 years old, he got a bike. And he was riding his bike through town, and he left it outside, I believe, somewhere. And when he came outside, someone had stolen it. So his bike was gone, and man, young Cassius loved that bike. So the story goes that there was this off-duty Louisville cop that would give boxing lessons in the basement at the YMCA like a couple times a week. And Ali went to him and asked him to teach him how to fight because if he ever saw that kid riding his bike, he wanted to whoop him right? He never did see his bike ever again, but he did become the greatest of all time, right? So if he doesn't,
that going for me,
which is nice. So if he doesn't get his bike stolen, you hope that there would have been another catalyst that would have let him into that gym, and the same things would have happened, but you're not really sure because that's the thing that set those events in motion. So perhaps Cassius Clay doesn't go into that. If that kid doesn't steal his bike, he doesn't go into that YMCA, doesn't get boxing lessons, doesn't knock out Sonny Liston and become the heavyweight champ, and then convert to Islam and change his name from Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali, and become an icon for an entire decade, and go on to light the Olympic flame and just be an inspiration to millions and be the most recognized man on the planet, and just a humanitarian in every sense of the word, and the greatest of all time in the boxing ring, but also outside of the ring. A credit to his race, the human race. And none of these things happen. Maybe he just stays Cassius Clay and takes over his father's house painting business. He painted church windows, Cassius Clay Sr. And maybe he gets drafted and goes to Vietnam. And, since he's not Muhammad Ali, he can't fight it. He can't he can't say it's against his religious beliefs, and he has to go, because he's just Cassius Clay, this kid from Louisville, who had a really nice bike growing up. That's what everybody remembered about him.
Right.
Maybe he gets killed in Vietnam, and we never know, that he was destined to be the greatest. And isn't it great that we got to live in a universe where some kid stole Cassius Clay's bike, and now he's the greatest of all time?
Yeah, so thank you to that guy.
Yeah, right?
I think they call that maybe the butterfly effect or something.
Yes. So somewhere out there was a guy growing up watching this kid fight going, I got his bike in my garage.
That bike's probably worth a lot of money right now.
Yes. Oh, that would be the greatest thing to pop up on eBay someday, right? Yeah. Muhammad Ali's stolen bike. And so you never know. The butterfly effect there, the series of events set in motion from the 12-year-old boy getting his bike stolen. Happy birthday, Muhammad Ali.
Absolutely. I think that's a good place to end, don't you?
I think so.
We're going to do this again, right?
Yes.
All right.
Yes, please. Let's do this again.
All right. Well, tune in next time. And it was a pleasure talking boxing with my cousin Dwayne.